Good morning. We're going to get started this morning with our invocation. That will be led by Dr. Major Jemison, pastor of St. John Missionary Baptist Church. Following that will be the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilman Todd Stone.
Please join me in prayer. All-wise and loving Father, first let me say thank you on behalf of all who are gathered here today. Thank you for your many and abundant blessings. Thank you for life itself, for the measure of health, and for all that we need for the facing of this hour. Thank you for the ability to be involved in youthful work, and for the honor of hearing appropriate or having appropriate responsibilities. Thank you as well for the freedom to embrace you. And thank you for loving us in season and out of season. Today, Lord, I pray for our mayor, for the various levels of city officials, and in particular for this assembled council. And I'm asking that you would graciously grant them wisdom to govern amid the conflicting interests and issues of our times, a sense of welfare for the needs of those who are the least to last and the lost and left out among us, a keen thirst for justice and for rightness, confidence in what is good and what is fitting, and the ability to work together in a harmonious way, even when there are honest disagreements among them, personal grace in their lives and personal peace in their lives, and joy in their task as servant leaders of our beloved city. I pray for the agenda set before them today. Please give them the wisdom and the insight and the assurance of what will be pleasing to you and what will be beneficial to those who live inside and in the surrounding areas of Oklahoma City. This we ask in your strong name, that name which is above every name, even Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor, and thank you, Councilman. I now call this meeting of the City Council to order. We have no special presentations today, but we do have 3 appointments under Office of the Mayor. The appointment of Chris Dahlgren to the Citizen Capital Improvement Sales Tax Advisory Board, Herschel Patel to the Oklahoma City CVB, and Brent Bryant in his new capacity as to the Post-Employment Benefits Trust. We can handle all those with one motion. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Now we are at item 4 on the agenda, Journal of Council Proceedings. We have A and B. We can take as one motion. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Request for uncontested continuances, item 5. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, sir. On page 22, item 9G1 under unsecured structures, we have item H. It's 430 West Main Street, and we're going to strike this because the owner is secured. And then on page 23, item number 9H1F, 430 West Main Street, and we're going to strike this also because the owner is secured. And that is all I have.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. City Manager. That brings us to item 6, revocable permits. We have a revocable permit with In Motive, Oklahoma for the Hottest 5K on August 9th using Wheeler Park. And we do have Carrie Ralston here to speak. If you wouldn't mind stating your name and address.
Hello. Yes, my name is Carrie Ralston. I reside at 17901 Briar Road in Newalla, Oklahoma, and I'm here representing Emotive Oklahoma. We are putting on our final race in a series, the Hottest 5K at Willard Park, August 9th at 8 p.m. So we have a big after party complete with DJs. A lot is providing wraps for all of our runners, snow cones, and Coop L and Oklahoma Autism are providing free beer. So it's a good time. We've had about 600 runners at each of our events. So hope this will be just as fun as successful. So
Great. Thank you.
thank you.
Any comments from Councilman Stone or Councilwoman Nice?
I'll say that sounds like a hot 5K to me. I'm excited about it, so I know it's going to be a great event.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Do you have to run to go to the after party?
No, come on. The more the merrier.
I'll meet you there.
Okay, we'll do it.
I'd say the runners, it's a lot of fun and a great synergy at these events. So
Excellent. I'll move for approval.
In second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Have a
appreciate
great
you guys.
event.
Thank you.
All right, we'll now recess the City Council meeting. We convene as the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority, a body with the same membership but slightly different responsibilities. Here we have items A, B, and C that we could take with one motion. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We'll now adjourn OCMFA and convene as the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority, where we have items A and B that we could take with one motion. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We'll now adjourn OCPPA. We'll convene as the Oklahoma City Environmental Assistance Trust, where we also have items A and B we can take with one motion. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We'll now adjourn the Oklahoma City Environmental Assistance Trust and reconvene as the City Council, where we find ourselves on page 4 of your printed agenda, item 7, the consent docket. Mr. City Manager, I don't believe we have any presentations, correct?
That's correct.
Is there anything that anybody wants to pull out for discussion or separate vote? Councilwoman Hammond?
Yeah, I'd like to pull AC out for a separate vote. It's concerning my main source of employment, so
Oh, okay.
I just want to
Well
avoid
done.
any conflict of interest so I can step out for that.
Absolutely.
And then BD for separate vote.
Okay. BD. Okay. Anything else to discuss or vote?
Oh, yeah, thanks, Mayor. Just a brief discussion on AN1 under 7 and AN2 under 7. It's on page 11.
AN1 and AN2?
Yes, sir.
Got it?
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, that's it. I guess typically I go in order, which in this case would mean why don't we go ahead and, Councilwoman Hammond, would you like to step out for a moment and knock that out? So item 7AC is a resolution approving the First Amendment to the 2017 Continuum of Care Program Operating Agreement. I would entertain a motion. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Okay, that takes care of that. Moving on, Councilman Cooper wanted to discuss items AN1 and 2.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to make the citizens, residents aware of each of these two streetscape projects. I'm really excited about both of them. The first one's the Paseo, and it's something I've been talking about, the kind of history of that area, and so I'm really excited to see a revitalization take place there. Same for the residents, just kind of be on the lookout over the next few weeks for meetings and conversations about what that will look like. Same between Northwest 23rd and Northwest 36th on Portland, along where Will Rogers Park calls home. And I'm really looking forward to seeing that area continue to revitalize as well. It's the, and I was like going to, and for now, that's all I want to say about those, but I just wanted to draw attention to those two projects.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. I was also going to mention at BQ, we are receiving generators from KFOR, basically, and I wanted to thank Wes Milbourne, who reached out a few months ago with that offer, and we'll make good use of that at Emergency Management. So that brings us to our only remaining thing to discuss before we vote on everything, and I don't know how we'll handle this. I'll kind of let the council guide that, but that's item 7BD. So this is a resolution authorizing application for a certificate of approval from the Downtown Design Review Committee to demolish the old city jail, old police headquarters, and old municipal court building. We do have a couple people who have signed up to speak. Do we want to start there? Okay. We'll start with Catherine Montgomery. Okay, sure. Marva? Marva Ellard. I think you know the drill. Name and address.
Marva Ellard, 1521 North Chartel Avenue. We were here, Catherine and I were here a couple of weeks ago, and we were asked to present a timeline, and we're happy to answer questions or talk about anything or to address any concerns or thoughts that any of the council have. I don't think we necessarily have a presentation. Does everyone have a copy of that? I have some larger ones here if anybody needs one.
I don't know that any of us have a copy.
Okay.
Of it.
It's your basic bar chart with major tasks and responsibilities and timelines on it as we see the project broken down and how long we anticipate it would take to accomplish certain aspects.
I guess just to help move the process along, last time Joe Beth and I were talking, and we asked Marva to put together a timeline for us to look at so we could get some feel for the project, and Marva was kind enough to send that to me Sunday afternoon. I took a look at it, and I talked to her for a minute this morning, but typically when I've looked at things like this before, it's a little more detailed, and what I mean by that is we don't have a purchase price. We have no tenants identified. We have no cash flow analysis. We have no lender, and there's no discussion of that. And so what I did was I asked Brent to take a look at these issues and pull some stuff together for me, and maybe Joe Beth and I can sit down with Brent and take a look at it. And I think what I would suggest is if the council would not object, is just defer this to the next council meeting and let us have the luxury and the benefit of looking at some of Brent's numbers to see if it's even a viable project.
And when you say that, Mark, you mean defer the whole item?
Yes.
Okay. I'll take that as a motion, I guess.
That's a motion. So moved.
Okay. All right, we got a motion and a second to defer item 7BD 2 weeks.
Yes, please.
Okay. Any, I suppose, Catherine, do you still wish to speak, or? I'm good. Okay. All right, well, any further discussion on the motion for deferral? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. The item is deferred. Thank you. That leaves the remainder of our consent docket items, which we could take with one motion. All right, we got a motion and a second for all of the items except for the two previously addressed. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. That concludes the consent docket, brings us to page 18 of your printed agenda. Item 8, the concurrence docket. Items A through K that we could take with one motion.
Move the items.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. That concludes the concurrence docket, brings us to page 20, items 9, requiring separate votes. We start with 9A. These are ordinances on final hearing that were recommended for approval by the Planning Commission. 9A1 is at 1205 South Mustang Road, going from R3M medium density to O2. This is in Ward 3. Councilman McAtee.
This is the applicant present. Not seeing the applicant here, I move for deferral.
Okay. Got a motion? Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9A2 is at 3600 Sandman Road, going from AA to SPUD 1122. Councilman Stone.
Thank you, Mayor.
Oh, and there is someone here to speak. The applicant, I guess.
Who's here to speak on this?
Joe Crossway. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Joe Crossway. I reside at 11727 Smoking Oaks Road. This property is immediately adjacent to my home. It consists currently of 5 acres. I have a contract to sell what is represented there as Tract A, and I'm retaining Tract B, and rather than doing regular lot split approval in consultation with the Planning Department, decided that this was the best option.
Thanks. This project had unanimous approval of Planning Commission. It's a simple lot split, so I'll move for approval.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Item 9A3 at 11301 Southwest 15th Street, going from PUD 1628 to SPUD 1123. Councilman McAtee.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Is the applicant present? If you would, David, give the council a brief overview of what's trying to go on here.
Sure. David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. This is a SPUD application that would allow a tunnel car wash. It will be immediately adjacent to a recently approved on-queue. The on-queue will be at the hard corner there at 15th and Mustang, so this will be just to the east of that. There was no protest, and it was recommended for approval unanimously by Planning Commission.
How does it fit in with what's going on as far as the turnpike is concerned in this area?
Yeah, I think it's in keeping with that. I mean, the nature of this area has changed dramatically and will continue to do so as the turnpike comes online with additional on-ramps, off-ramps. I think you'll see a significant commercialization in this area. And so, like I said, this is going to be right next to an on-queue. So I think it's not uncommon that you might see a gas station and a car wash next to each other. So with the proximity of the off-ramp there, I think this will be a good fit for the area. Again, this is an area that in the larger PUD, we had significant interest and input from citizens. We reached out initially. There was no concern or comments from any citizens here, and therefore, Planning Commission did recommend approval unanimously.
Thank you. There were no comments at the Planning Commission. It was unanimously approved. Unless the council has some questions, I move for approval.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to 9A4 at 2029 Northwest 36th Street, going from R1 to SPUD 1124. Councilman Cooper.
Is anyone here to speak on this particular item? Yeah, David. Can you tell us a little bit about this triplex?
Sure. Again, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. This is a triplex attached townhomes immediately east of Penn along Northwest 36th Street. One of the issues that we dealt with early on with the Planning Commission was the concern about multiple curb cuts there along 36 based upon the proximity to Pennsylvania. So we were able to come up with a single point of access that will serve all 3 units. It is worth noting that it's immediately south and abutting the apartments that are being developed just north of us. So it's in keeping with the area. It's an exciting infill project to have these 3 modern townhomes. We did add a TE at the Planning Commission stage to add additional screening on the east through landscaping that then satisfied all the members of Planning Commission. There was no protest, and Planning Commission was unanimous in their recommendation for approval.
So when it says it's Planning Commission approval subject to the summary of the technical evaluation, was that just on those 2 TEs about the, to the west with the shrubbery and then on the east?
That's right. So it's the 1 and 2, and then number 3, the underline, provide landscaping to the east. That was one that was added at the Planning Commission stage. And we actually submitted a revised site plan that reflects the additional landscaping.
Okay. And there were no protests? So
Correct.
I would move approval.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Okay, item 9A5 at 12000 Northwest Expressway going from AA to SPUD 1125. Councilman Greiner?
Yeah, this is a SPUD that allows for commercial, will allow for commercial development with a few mixed uses. Has staff approval, unanimous Planning Commission approval. There hasn't been any protests that I know of. Has anybody signed up to talk? No. With that, I'll move for approval.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9B, this is an ordinance on final hearing. It was also recommended for approval. It's a special permit to operate a high-impact institutional use hospital in the O2 General Office District at 9800 Broadway Extension. Councilwoman Nice.
Thank you, Mayor. Is anyone here to speak on this one? All right. This is an area where there is also a lot of high-impact use with other hospitals and other medical facilities. So with that, I'll move for approval.
Second. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9B2. I'm sorry, that was 9B1 before. 9B2 is a special permit to permit a drinking establishment in the downtown business district at 18 Northwest 6th Street. And Councilwoman Hammond, we do have someone who's signed up to speak. I'm struggling with the handwriting a little bit, so you know who you are.
Hi, thank you all. I'm Shanaz from Mason Associates. I'm the architect for this project. So it's a hotel project, 7-story hotel project, and we will have a jump lobby, and then this is going to be on 4th floor, a bar facility. So it's going to be helping the hotel guests to drink that.
Well, it sounds very exciting, what's going on right over there. Yeah, it was unanimously approved by Planning Commission, so I will motion for approval.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
9C, this is an ordinance on final hearing. It was recommended for approval. It's a special permit to operate an emergency shelter and feeding site in PUD 1340 at 5901 South Missouri. Councilman Stone.
Thank you, Mayor Francis. Has anyone signed up to speak?
You want to start there?
Let's do.
All right. We've got Jamie Zumwalt.
Yes, Jamie Zumwalt. I reside at 1724 Northwest 33rd Street. I'll just read a brief statement. Thank you for your time and consideration of our application. Joe's Addiction began in 2007 as a coffee shop at 1806 Southeast 59th Street and grew into what is now a community of people who have found that doing life together makes it easier both in the struggle to survive and the struggle to be good. Our goal today is to gain your approval to feed people, both people who are housed and living in this low-income area and people who are living outside on the street. The average income in the neighborhoods surrounding our location is $11,000 a year, and this area of Oklahoma City has been deemed a food desert. Many of the residents are unable to afford enough food to feed their families and do not have transportation to grocery stores that are miles away. For the last 12 years, we have been sharing food with our neighbors, welcoming families like Jewel, a single mama, and her 5 children who have been eating lunch with us since school let out for the summer. Elderly, disabled people, like a woman named Kat, who are not only in need of meals, but also in need of friendship and company to eat with them, as well as homeless women and men who are we are not only providing meals for, but are offering encouragement and support through AA and NA meetings, connections to mental health resources, and housing opportunities. As you probably know, this part of Oklahoma City where we are located, across the street from Valley Brook, suffers not only from poverty, but criminal gang activity, meth addiction, higher rates of mental illness, as well as being known for the sex industry that lines Southeast 59th Street. We did not bring these problems to this part of the city. They were already there, but Joe's Addiction is a part of the solution. Our AA and NA meetings provide support for addicts who are struggling to stay clean in an environment where methamphetamine is available in large and cheap quantities. Our pastoral and peer support provides encouragement for those who struggle with mental illness to access the already existing mental health services that are provided in our city. Our teachings on peacemaking bring a curb to the violence that is the norm for the gang members in the area, and our meals alleviate an already overstretched budget for people living in poverty, as well as pulling together the community, creating healthy friendships and building hope and solidarity among a population that, frankly, is struggling in so much despair. We are very agreeable to the conditions that are proposed by the City Planning Commission, and we, the community that is Joe's Addiction, respectfully request that you grant us the permit to feed the people of our community. Thank you.
Who else spoke? Thank you. Dan Short.
Good morning. My name is Dan Short. I live at 244 Northwest 91st Street. I'm the founder and previous director for Mustard Seed Development Corporation, which no longer exists. We liquidated about 2 years ago and gave the remainder of our assets to another nonprofit startup, Restore OKC. At that time, since then, I have been relating to and working with Joe's Addiction as a volunteer. I'm on the board of directors there, and I just stand to encourage you to permit this really vital alternative resource to continue in that challenging area. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. So I don't think there's any question y'all are doing some great things over there. Sometimes when you do great things, you're also tasked to do great things. So I'm going to move this item for approval. Like I said, I think y'all do fantastic work over there. I would just implore you to please make sure that you're good neighbors over there. There were some protests on here that I think they have some valid concerns. But again, I would just implore that y'all be good neighbors, as good as you can be. So with that, I'll move for approval.
Got a motion and a second. Due to the level of protest, this requires 7 affirmative votes for approval. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously and with over the 7 required votes. Thank you. Thanks for your work. Okay, that brings us to 9D. This is an ordinance on final hearing. This is a language change in our ordinances regarding low-speed vehicles. This is the 3rd of 3 meetings. There was previously a presentation and then a public hearing, and this is potential final consideration pending a motion. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9E, this is an ordinance that is being introduced today, so it is the first of 3 meetings. This would be introduction today, public hearing on August 13th, and a final adoption on August 27th. This relates to businesses and the general schedule of fees, et cetera. I believe we have a presentation.
Yes, so Laura McDevitt is here from the Municipal Counselor's Office to present the item.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. The ordinance being introduced today would establish fees to recover the city's costs associated with providing medical marijuana businesses with certificates of compliance, verifying that they meet all applicable municipal requirements as required by state law. In June of 2018, State Question 788 was passed, allowing medical marijuana in the state. The language of State Question 788 was ambiguous, and several bills were passed during the most recent legislative session for clarification. Senate Bill 1030 was an initiative of the Oklahoma Municipal League to make clear the roles and responsibilities of municipalities in the regulation of medical marijuana. Senate Bill 1030, which will be effective August 29th, requires that medical marijuana business license applicants provide the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority with a certificate of compliance from the municipality where they propose to locate. The Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority will be requiring certificates of compliance from existing licensees as well as first-time applicants. The process will be similar to current procedures the city utilizes for providing alcohol business license applicants with certificates of compliance. The city will verify that the proposed location has the appropriate zoning for the business being conducted, and the city will perform necessary safety inspections for compliance with applicable electrical, fire, plumbing, waste, and building codes. The proposed ordinance updates Chapter 60 to recover the city's costs for performing these inspections and verifications, and the fees vary depending on the type of business. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
How did we come up with the fees that we're charging on that?
So the city staff worked with the budget to determine what our actual costs would be, since there's going to be a number of inspections that will be required, and then also the zoning. So it was based on what staff time would be.
Thank you.
Will the inspections require additional employees to be hired?
I will defer to Development Services on that.
No, we believe we can make the inspections with the current staff.
And then the fees, like the back, like it's like a back pay kind of. Am I understanding that correctly? Like we would have to charge someone?
So what will be happening is that as licenses come up for renewal with the Medical Marijuana Authority, because we don't license medical marijuana businesses in the city, as their licenses are coming up for renewal on the state level, the Medical Marijuana Authority, as part of their renewal, will be requiring the certificate of compliance. So even if someone's operating now, they'll still have to get the certificate of compliance for us in order to be able to get their license for next year.
But they're not paying like a back payment?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, well, I would thank you, Laura. I would entertain a motion to introduce the ordinance for consideration.
So moved.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. The ordinance is introduced for consideration, and we'll now have a public hearing at our next meeting and potential final adoption at the meeting following. That brings us to 9F1. This is a public hearing regarding the dilapidated structures here listed. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak on this public hearing? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the resolution found at 9F2 declaring that the structures are dilapidated. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9G1 is a public hearing regarding the unsecured structures here listed, except for the one that was stricken at the beginning of the meeting. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak under this public hearing? Seeing none, I will accept that motion for the resolution found at 9G2, declaring that the structures are unsecured. Is there a second? Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9H1 is a public hearing regarding the abandoned buildings here listed, except for the one stricken at the beginning of the meeting. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak at this public hearing? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for 9H2, adopting a resolution declaring that the buildings are abandoned. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. That brings us to 9I1. This is a resolution authorizing the municipal councilor to confess judgment without admitting liability in the case of Sheets v. OKC. I don't believe it is advised that we need an executive session, but I'd entertain a motion. Got a motion and a second to adopt the resolution. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9J1 is a claim recommended for denial. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak? Seeing none, I don't believe we need executive session, but I'd entertain a motion. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 10A1 are claims recommended for approval. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak? Seeing none, I don't believe we need executive session. I'd entertain a motion to adopt all the claims at once. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. I want you to know there's been days where we didn't get through Office of the Mayor this fast. Okay, items from council. Item 11, why don't we move and start with Ward 8.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just wanted to briefly update everybody on the penalty reduction program, what I call the amnesty program. 27 days into the program, without any form of advertising whatsoever, we have collected $22,268. Beginning in the month of August, we will be in the Curbside Chronicle advertising, August, September, and October, and in the Gazette for the month of August. I would also say that the employees are really active and working hard on this project. They're wearing these badges at the windows. They're handing out brochures. And they even have big signs if you'd like to have one to remind people to come in and pay your fine. So with that, thank you very much.
I also want to say thank you to our court administrator, Mrs. LaShawn Thompson, for her dedication to making sure we get out the information.
And Galen.
And Ms. Galen as well, who is assisting her in that process. And last night we had an Opportunity Zone town hall at the Fairview Baptist Church, and it was a packed house. And Mrs. Thompson was allotted time to talk about this penalty program. And we also had Workforce Oklahoma speaking about the opportunities for those in the community to be educated and get back into the workforce. So I definitely want to thank them, as well as all of the presenters that we had last evening to speak about opportunity zones, what that looks like, and how the community can actually benefit from what an opportunity zone could look like for some of those communities. Because obviously the conversation has been gentrification and displacement, but having the conversation to make sure we're talking about it and educating the community also means that we can figure out ways to develop without displacement, and we can also educate the communities on what this looks like and how it can actually benefit if we're able to get the right groups in the room to talk about how it can benefit them and bring some of those amenities that all of us have been looking for collectively to the table to benefit. So that was the topic of the conversation last night, and again, we had a great crowd, and I'm very thankful for Reverend Reed to open his doors for us to have that conversation there, and for the community to show up because we had a really great crowd. But I do want to mention this Sunday, we're having a block party on the east side, so come join us. It's with the Oklahoma City Energy, OKC Black Eats, and myself, and it's going to be off of 7th and MLK, so right in front of Douglas. There's this empty lot. And we're going to have the energy players there. We're also going to have food trucks there. And we're going to have a good time to talk about Northeast Oklahoma City, expose the community to the energy, because we have a lot of different nations and cultures that represent our Oklahoma City energy. And I think it's good for us to be exposed to what they look like and who they are, and for them to be exposed to our community as well. So I hope you can come. It's from 12 until 4 on this Sunday. So looking forward to that. And I know it's probably something else I'm missing, but I think I need some more tea. So with that, thank you so much.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to the conference that Councilwoman Nice and I attended over the weekend. I'm happy to say that, much to our Chief of Staff's imploring, we stayed out of the papers, didn't get in any trouble. But I really do appreciate the opportunity to just network with school board members, city council members, and county elected officials from across the country. The conference is put on by a group called Local Progress, and their focus is really helping bring power back to our local municipalities, counties, et cetera. Particularly, a lot of the discussions we had in their sessions was about state preemption and kind of the creative ways that other cities and counties are working to still work to improve their communities, even when the state has kind of stepped in and said that you can or cannot do things. And particularly, the thing that I think I really took away, I attended a lot of sessions. The sessions that I mostly attended were around creating and preserving affordable housing and protecting low-income homeowners and renters. I think when I ran for office, in my sort of little stump speech that I gave at events and things, I always came back to the point that the reason that I was running and the reason why that the voices that I bring when I sit in this chair are the people in our community that have been historically living in the margins. I'm here to bring those voices to the table. Because in my mind, when we create communities that work for people with mobility devices, people who don't own a car, people who have been, whose communities have been disinvested, we're creating a better community for all of us. And I know that conversations about power can be scary for some of us, but I think in thinking about, I think the thing that I walked away from over the weekend was that I do have a lot of power sitting where I do, that a community elected me and gave me power to be their voice. So, I think the dynamics of who has power, who are we speaking for, I think really is what I came away with. And, I don't think I've done a good enough job in my seat so far of using my voice to connect the transatlantic slave trade to the ongoing housing segregation of both race and class that we have in our city, and the continued disinvestment of just from the city, from private investment in our historically Black neighborhoods and communities, unless it benefits, kind of speaking back to opportunity zones, unless it benefits those who've already been given a hand up in our society. Or in the example of my ward, I know Ward 6 has a reputation for not voting very much. And, I think that I think about the people who have felt left out of the processes of our city, and therefore I think have gotten either tired of trying to speak up for themselves and not being heard, or just out of fear. So I think, the conference reinforced for me that those of us who have the privilege of sitting here and feeling welcome in this space, have a responsibility to kind of hand over our proverbial microphone and clear the way for the voices who haven't been traditionally heard. So yeah, I think I'm really grateful that we got to go and got to experience BRT. We got to go out of the downtown on BRT and go get some Jamaican food, and just kind of experience the kind of range of a city like Detroit that has, a lot of the wonderful, shiny redevelopment happening, but also has a lot of areas that are struggling, and getting to see the resilience of both was really an honor. So thank you all.
I'm sorry, I'd like to piggyback on that since you brought it up, and I apologize for taking time. But I also attended, we went on the urban ag tour, so we got to see what it looks like as far as a community, because it is a community that has been disenfranchised when you look at it, but they've been able to teach themselves about agriculture, what that looks like, taking some of those empty lots that are next to them and start farming, community farming, and training young people about what that looks like when you can grow your own fruits and vegetables. And that obviously hit a spot, because with us being able to talk about food insecurity, which was one of the conversations I was a part of and listened to, and for Oklahoma City's name to come up in the conversation from one of the presenters, it means something, because that means they recognize that we're trying to fight food insecurity in our own city. So for just the name Oklahoma City to be mentioned all the way in Detroit, recognizing the efforts that we were able to do with this council, I'm grateful for. And that's a story that made my heart proud to tell, that this is a city, this is a council that supports what we're doing to fight and combat food insecurity in our most disadvantaged cities, in areas of our city. So that, and this was my first time ever not using an Uber. And I thank Councilwoman Hammond for that, because it just cost us $2 to get to the airport, to downtown, and $2 more to get from downtown to the airport. So a lot of things were obviously opening our minds and our thoughts about how we can improve and better our communities and what that looks like, and to just sit in the room with other like-minded people who are fighting the same fight when it comes to just that local level of being able to progress their communities, when you do have this sense of where you feel like you're put on a different level, when you have the state telling you can't do something and you're still trying to do other things to make sure your community is able to sustain after. So those conversations were really good conversations for 2 days, and I got a chance to meet. It took me all the way to Detroit to meet Councilwoman Vanessa Harper from Tulsa, and she's just an hour away. But for her to be there to present and talk about the things that she was talking about as well, I mean, that means local level is being represented and Oklahoma is being represented at the same time. So I appreciate the opportunity to be able to go and speak about and listen to how we can help to improve better our communities within Oklahoma City.
Yeah, first I wanted to say thank you to Councilman Stone for taking me on a tour of Ward 4. It was great. You know, I grew up out around 15th and Anderson, and to go to Ward 4 and to see the parts of Oklahoma City that are the boundary up against that, it was in a lot of ways like a homecoming. I don't know. And so I really appreciated that. Went to Grill on the Hill for the first time. Please save your hate letters if you are mad at me for that being the first time I've ever gone to Grill on the Hill. It was tasty, and I had a chicken fried steak, so I know what I'm doing. So thanks for that. Thanks for sharing the concerns that you had with your ward, like in terms of the issues confronting the residents there. Heavy on my mind ever since now is Bodine Elementary School and the need for sidewalks around that elementary school. Unfortunately, it's one of the elementary schools in Bike Walk OKC. Planning did a lot of great work in there, and we've prioritized 20 elementary schools that we want to do sidewalks. I say we, it was before I came on council, but Bodine's not on there, and because I went on that tour with you, Bodine's now on my mind, and it's something I'm going to be thinking about as we craft the sidewalk portion of Maps 4. And so that, yeah, I mean, of course. And so this is going back to when Councilman Stonecipher and I were talking even before the election results came in, and I said, I want to go tour all the wards, and this was why, right? Because if I don't have a chance to actually see it for myself, I'm a film studies person, I'm a very visual learner, and then to hear from another council person about what's going on, then I won't know. We're all in our bubbles. We just all are. It doesn't matter left, right, center, we just are. So I really appreciate you taking time to take me out there. Also, there was a biker bar. It was cool, right off of, anyway, for the autobiography. But it was really, really a great time. I really enjoyed Ward 4, so thank you. And then I wanted to say thank you to the Boys and Girls Club in Ward 2 at 36th and Western. I got a repeat visit. They invited me back, and I got to watch the animated film Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse with them and teach them how to analyze moving images for meaning and theme. And that's actually how I concluded my last year at Jefferson Middle School this May. And you want to see kids light up. Take a movie they know or a character they know and start asking them questions like, how does this reflect present day reality? How's the story about today's society? And then you throw a big fancy word like allegory at them and say, that's what that means. Like, you have, by telling me what this film represents today, you now understand allegory. You can go write a 5-paragraph essay on that. And you can just see them going, oh, 5 paragraphs, nothing. Like, they understood, and they understood the importance of seeing all the different types of characters playing Peter Parker, playing Spider-Man, a woman, a young Asian woman also, Porter Parker, the pig, a black character who's surrounded by a lot of Latinx kids. Well, that meant a lot to my kids at Jefferson to see themselves on film. They don't. And so that was really, really cool to get to share that with the Boys and Girls Club too. And those kids are just with it, some of the ideas that they had. The other thing, and I look forward to showing up around October for a nice PG or PG-13 rated horror film with them. And then 39th Street is going to be having a meeting tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. at Expressions Church to discuss the redesign of that area, its streetscape. I discussed earlier that Paseo and Portland along Will Rogers Park are coming up for a street enhancement project. Well, so too is the historic 39th Street district. For those of you who heard me speak last month on LGBT history, you'll note that 39th Street is the heart of that history. So citizens are going to be able to come, speak to the design consulting engineer firm, share their ideas about how sidewalks and bike lanes and crosswalks and streetlights can create a sense of place, right? When you go to the Castro in San Francisco, or you go to Boys Town in Chicago, or you go to New York City where the historic Stonewall Inn is, you see LGBT-owned businesses or businesses that are friendly toward LGBT folk, and those businesses are bookstores and they're coffee shops and they're restaurants with patios on really wide sidewalks, and they might have a rainbow flag. Just to let everyone know that this is the character of this place, in the same way that you see the Spanish tile in Paseo represent the character of that place, or the Tower Theater represents the character of Uptown 23rd. And so I'm just really excited to see what the people of 39th Street think the character of their district is, and how we can maybe put Castro and them to shame. And then finally, I saw the new Quentin Tarantino film this weekend, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I would really recommend it. But something really stood out to me as we are doing this work that we're about to undertake with MAPS 4 in our neighborhoods. Charles Manson was in prison for most of the 60s. And what I learned about him was he had gone into prison as a white supremacist. Like, he believed that black people were literally inferior to white people. Such were the times, right? The 1950s, 40s, when he had been born. But he's in prison for all of the 60s, so he misses our civil rights movement. He misses the March on Washington. And prison was deeply paranoid and deeply segregated. So when he gets out, I've learned in 1967, and he sees integration, and he sees black and white folk walking on the streets, Hispanic, Latinx, Native American, Asian. It was shocking to him, to say the least. And he believed that a race war was coming between the federal government and black people against white people. And while he believed that black people were less than, he believed they were stronger than, and they'd beat the white people. Charles Manson, ladies and gentlemen. But they'd beat him, so he and his clan would hide at a ranch underground while this war went on, and when they came out, he would and his people would lead the black people into a new glorious future where Charles Manson and his people were the rulers. That's insane. But it bears some resemblance to the madman who blew up our buildings here. This belief that there was going to be a race war coming, that there was going to be the federal government on the side of the black people to start that race war. And so it's been interesting to me throughout history to see these sort of through lines of someone's paranoia and ignorance leading them to do very harmful and destructive damage. So I want to conclude with this then. Charles Manson had a goal with all of that. It wasn't just about starting a race war. His goal, and I'm quoting now, was to create so much fear in us that we would no longer want to leave our homes. That was his goal. Sometimes I worry he succeeded. Sometimes I worry about that when I was knocking doors and people told me too often they don't know their neighbors. Or sometimes those bubbles that I talk about, how easy it is for us to get in our cars, drive to work, drive back home, hang out with just the people we know. We can't let a madman do that to us, and that was really on my mind this weekend. And I'm very encouraged, as Nikki and Joe Beth were saying, and as our tour of our respective wards, and coming up with yours as well. We've got to get out of our bubbles, and we've got to talk to people, even the people we don't think look like us or think like us. Thank you.
All right, that concludes items from council. Now we have item 12 on the agenda, city manager reports.
Yeah, so Eric Winger is here. We had promised the council that we'd come back periodically and speak to the issue of the street lights that we've been having. Eric Winger is here, and then Pat Lewis will be joining him from OG&E.
And we did talk about trying to for sure have the highways addressed by the end of the summer, and I'm going by the technical sense of summer, which leaves you about 7 weeks or so.
Sure. No, thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm happy to present this morning. Eric Winger, Director of Public Works for Oklahoma City. As we update again today, there's been significant progress again made, and so we're going to cover some of the same things that we've looked at previously: the highway street lighting progress, the Project 180 lighting progress, metal theft, and then also some additional OG&E updates. So when we look at highway street lighting, we've had a lot of input. I know that OG&E continues to take calls. We're continuing to respond to citizens about lighting that is out along the highway. And when we talk about the highways, this is the progress since our last update. There's been one additional repair made. There are 4 that are remaining, but we've actually had yet another new theft since our last update just a little over a month ago. This is the map of Oklahoma City, and each of the major highway systems has been affected. So I-35 is running up the middle, I-40 east and west, you can see there, I-240. But we're looking at 5 different locations, and the one that has the most significant outages right now continues to be Interstate 40. But you'll see at the top of the drawing, there are some impacted areas along I-44, but you'll also see the other 2 impacted areas near I-240 and I-35. So on this next slide, I can show you a list of those. And this is related to either copper theft or some of the infrastructure repairs. What I will share is this list is greatly reduced from what we presented several months ago. You might recall that we had over a dozen locations of theft. We had over a dozen locations of infrastructure damage, and those have been dramatically reduced. At I-40, from I-44 to I-35, OG&E is working on those repairs today. So that's the one at the top of this list. At I-240, just west of Shields, that's where our new theft area is. And so those are being assessed now by OG&E, and they're developing a plan for those repairs. But the next 3 locations that you see, these are ones that ODOT is going to be completing as a part of Oklahoma Department of Transportation work. And those are at I-240, I-35, I-44 between the I-235 interchange and Lincoln, and then also I-44 near Northwest 39th Street. So repairs underway at I-40, new theft at I-240, I-35, and then ODOT is continuing to track some work that's a part of their construction progress as a part of those projects in those areas. One new item that we're bringing to you today is the LED conversion is underway, and so OG&E has updated us that I-44 from Northwest 30th to Interstate 240, and that conversion is ongoing. It is expected to last through October. So they are converting lights, but they're also finding that some of the underground circuits are damaged, and so they're actually doing some infrastructure upgrades with that. There's some additional updates that Pat Lewis might be able to provide at the end of the presentation as well, if there's some questions about some of the additional LED upgrades. But at least as it relates to some of the highway systems that are starting to come online, this is one of those projects that they're beginning now.
Eric, does that cause outages?
So when the LED upgrades do occur, the outages happen. So as they take a system offline and they de-energize that, and as they start to change out the fixtures, and as you recall, they're changing out the voltage and the circuitry, it will leave areas of Oklahoma City dark. Now it's temporary, and that's why I wanted to mention they are currently targeting the October timeframe to have that completed, but it could be for several weeks, if not for a couple of months, while they make that change. Now that does not include all of the LED upgrades, again, that Pat Lewis might be able to also provide that are citywide. And we've noticed, just as we are working on traffic signals citywide, a number of our intersections are already receiving those LED updates. You can definitely tell those because the style of the fixture is different. It's a low-profile fixture that we have shown a picture of in the past, but that is ongoing citywide as well. So the repair schedule, and as the mayor alluded, we have had a focus on September on the highway lighting repairs. Other than the new theft and as maybe new damages occur, we'll work closely with OG&E on those, but I feel as though that we are on target to have those completed except for the ODOT construction projects. So ODOT, as they continue to do that work and those repairs at those specific locations where they may have construction is going to extend past this summer. But the LED conversion is also underway. And so again, all focus and attention has been in those areas since we started these updates this past spring. This is just a reminder of some of those other ODOT construction areas. And so this again might be areas that you'll see outages or partial outages on I-40, I-44, I-240, and I-35. So nearly every major interstate system in Oklahoma City has some level of construction by ODOT. It's generally limited to the interchanges. ODOT's not doing large work on miles and miles of interstate system right now, but again, I-44 and I-235 is under construction. I-240 and I-35 is under construction. They're now starting some work at I-35 and the Deep Fork Bridge, and so just be aware that you may see some outages in those specific locations. Our next part of the update is on Project 180, and we have experienced a significant outage in lighting on Project 180 that did not have to do with copper theft, and it did not have to do with as much of infrastructure damage as we were having some hardware and some manufacturer issues. But we've made significant progress since this spring, so I'm happy to bring you that update today. Two types of lights. You recall that a lot of the poles in Project 180 have two different light heads on them. The street light head is at the very top of the pole, and the pedestrian light head is about mid-pole. But I'm happy to report that we are nearly complete with all of the street light LED conversions in the downtown area. So 163 of 169 of those lights have been LED converted, and there's only 6 remaining. We feel that we're going to be able to cover those here shortly in just the next few weeks. We've also ordered nearly 50 additional kits so that if we do experience an outage or damage or something, we can simply change out that light and we're not waiting on the manufacturer to ship us parts. So we have attic stock that you'll see here just to keep that in our inventory so that we can fix those more readily in the future. However, on the pedestrian lights, we are still suffering a little bit from manufacturer delays in getting additional parts and kits to make those conversions. So I'm going to show you 2 maps of those. This is the map of Project 180. Everything that you see in green is one of the Project 180 lighted downtown streets, and all those that are in green have been converted. So only those that are remaining, and they're generally around City Hall and up on Northwest 5th Street, those are those 6 fixtures that we have just not yet been able to update, coming in the next couple of weeks, but we will have this complete. Downtown is relit. The street lights do provide a lot of light, very different than what we were experiencing a year ago where we had areas of darkness. So on this next map, however, very different story. This is that light that is halfway up that pole. Everything that is in green has been upgraded, so we've installed about 38, almost 40 kits of the LED lights, and those are the areas shown in green. But we're waiting on parts for the areas that are shown in orange, and as soon as we're able to receive those from the manufacturer, we'll absolutely get those installed as soon as possible. So the pedestrian lights is where I believe this schedule is going to extend. On the street lights and the construction schedule for the street lights, we absolutely will finish that work up likely here in August of this year. I'm happy to invite up Sergeant Becker to do some updates on metal theft. I mean, Oklahoma City Police Department has been very active. We've continued to have meetings with Oklahoma City Police and also OG&E as we've addressed streetlight updates and all of those different items. And so happy to bring him up today to make that presentation.
And by the way, Deputy Chief Baker has not been demoted to Sergeant.
Thank you.
I'm sure you've known him that long. So.
Good morning, everybody. Jeff Becker with Police Department. Just as background information, the Police Department has a metal theft unit with 2 detectives in it, and they work the cases that are assigned based on thefts throughout the city, but they also work proactively in investigations. We have 14 licensed recyclers in the city, and those detectives go out and communicate what the requirements are in the state statute and the city ordinance on them buying metals from the individuals coming in there to sell them. And we're pleased to report that since our last update, we have not had any violations for them violating those ordinances or statutes. The detectives send undercover officers in reversals to try to sell wires consistent with the street lights, like 14-gauge wire, and we have not had any violations for that. So what we have found with the licensed recyclers is our best avenue is to educate them on the requirements and seek compliance, and that is what we have found. So we feel that approach has allowed us to have a lot of progress in getting them on board. Where we have seen issues is when they have turnover at the recycling facilities, and that's just an issue that we have to maintain open lines of communication with them on the ordinances. We're also working with Tulsa Police Department, their metal theft equivalent, on improvements to the state statute and adjusting our city ordinance in this area as well. So we feel we've come a long way since the rash of thefts that we had previously, and from our role with Metal Theft Unit, working with the recyclers, that's primarily through education. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Chief, are there metal recyclers in the metro that are not in our city limits?
Yes, there are. And that's always a concern, is that we'll have thefts and they'll go outside of our jurisdiction. And, you know, we try to make our meetings, our informational meetings, open to anyone. And to the extent that we can work with those just outside our borders, so to speak, we'll do that.
Have you worked with the police departments outside our borders to check on their metal recyclers?
The metal theft detectives are very committed to this. This is their niche.
Yeah.
And they do share information with metro area law enforcement. And we do that on lots of different crimes.
Right.
Obviously, thieves, if you will, don't worry about borders, jurisdictions of cities. So we do share information with our counterparts in the metal theft area.
Thank you.
And I will turn it over to Pat Lewis with OG&E.
Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. Pat Lewis, OG&E 321 North Harvey. The update from OG&E, I just want to say, since we all started collaborating on this effort with you, city staff, the police department, I think we found some gaps in our system. One of the gaps that we had at OG&E was reporting, so we were able to develop a new reporting mechanism. We told people you could, our customers and our citizens, you could report, but you actually needed an account number to do so. Now that we have this new icon on our website, you can do it without the account number. That has helped tremendously. Anybody can report. Never assume that the street light has been reported. I know a lot of times one individual who might live by the house thinks that somebody else might have reported it, so always feel free to use that. Since we've developed this new site, we've probably had hundreds and hundreds of reports of street lights. So that's been a success. That's a gap that we found in this whole process, so it's going to help us moving forward. One other thing I might comment on is outside of the major highways that where we are fixing these lights and we are aware of these problems, I believe Mr. Winger commented on this as well. When there's a string of lights, say down, I think I was on Council Road the other day. Council Road probably had about 15 lights that we recently replaced with LED lights around Northwest Expressway and 63rd. 2 lights might have been out on that string of 15 lights. Now that we're putting in LED, we have to change the voltage on those lights, so that goes to the engineering department. They write up a job. Then we go out there and change it from, I think, 220 volts to 110 volts, and that takes a little time getting it repaired. As we convert to the new LEDs throughout the city, we will have some delays as far as that goes. And that's about all I have.
So Pat, when we see, like, if we see one-offs where, what we've been talking about is a lot of these strings of lights that were out along highways and all, but you still will be out and see, a single light that's out. Are those situations where there may be issues with having the equipment to replace that, having the right equipment to replace it, and it may be something that requires a conversion to be able to fix that?
Yes, a lot of times we won't necessarily have to change the voltage on those one-aughts, and you'll see those in neighborhoods, where you'll have a neighborhood that has 10 to 15 lights that are not on a string. what we'll do is we'll go out there and check the bulb. If it's a bulb that's burned out, then we're going to put in the new LED. But also there might be some bad underground to it. So when we go out there, we can usually repair it to 5 to 7 days. But if the underground is bad and we have to go and fix that, then that could be a 10 to 14 day return on that, possibly even longer. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
That is all we have?
So you think we'll get maybe at least one more before the end of the summer?
Yes.
Probably
Yeah.
after Labor
We've
Day.
been trying to come back like every 3 to 4 weeks, I think, where we've scheduled. Every 4 weeks, I think it is.
Okay. Any questions on any of that? Okay. Moving on, Mr. City Manager.
That's all I have.
You can access claims and payroll at the website at okc.gov by clicking on the agenda. That brings us to citizens to be heard, and we do have one who has signed up, item 13. Ronnie Kirk.
My name is Ronnie Kirk from 2328 North Missouri from Ward 7. Monday, I came down and met with the Park Development members Monday. And today, you see, I have a letter that 2 weeks ago I gave y'all a letter that I wrote to the City Council to Ron North 26 years ago. Today I bring you a letter for a response from the city that I got 26 years ago. And so I told them, same thing I asked on that letter that you're getting today is the same thing we asked 26 years ago, restrooms in our parks. And he said, how do you know from reading the letter that they didn't go down and observe what you had on Fort Martin Luther King? I said, the reason I know they just assumed I didn't have restrooms there. But last Monday I went out Crossland Rental and made sure I was still on their computer 26 years ago. She said yes. And trying to get these kids these jobs is when they get school age where they can work. I got to thinking, these kids, they can come down and get credits for sweeping up the offices here. The parking lots all downtown, all the jobs in town. Everybody get tax breaks and credits for helping out the kids. All the jobs, not just the parks, but all the jobs throughout the city, the restaurants, the hotels, the fast food places, working everywhere. They all get tax breaks for helping our kids out. And I also want to know, the pictures I get, the pictures that you have, is ones we took on 4th and Martin Luther King when we first started going on the river over 20 years ago. And the other pictures with all the people on it is the ones we took on 23rd and Sooner Road. You see hundreds of people there. Even from the police aerial photos, you see with people there for years. Because every year we have a party. We didn't do no advertising. People just know we're doing something. I put a sign out on the corner, say Ronnie Kirk's River Party. Boy, they know where to come. Didn't have to put nothing on there or no date on there, but they know Ronnie Kirk said he was going to do something, and he did it. And those are the pictures that you see that y'all have today. Those ain't took last week. Those are some of the kids on from Fort Martin Luther King. They have grandkids. They're grown. So we're still trying to get all our kids somewhere to go. And I said, that Lost River Lake, that recreation area there, I got the photos here. I said, why this big old company down there, they got plenty of land, and the city leased them all this other property for 12 or 15 miles of property in those both the areas that we use. They was included where we couldn't go down there, and they leased it to this company here. I got this upstairs on the 4th floor, and I said, why would they do that? Me and my wife was sitting there just brainstorming. And so if you lease it to another company, sometimes you do be evicted. They do let you know. And the city had all these area photos and photos of these people on the northeast side using these park areas. And they leased and said, 1 year we go back, which was 2.5 years ago, we can't even go down there. The place is leased out. They lease is up in 2 more years.
Ronnie,
So-
we're at about 4 minutes, if you could come and bring it to a conclusion.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I think I can, and Mr. Byron Scott in Baltimore, Maryland, they'll probably be watching the city council here and their city council chambers, because they got all information. We've been communicating. Mr. Baltimore, Maryland, he's the president of the city council, and he's on the city council. Byron Scott. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Take care. All right, that concludes our citizens who signed up to speak.
That's my original letter.
Oh, you have a good archiving process. Thank you, Ronnie. That concludes our citizens who signed up to speak. It also concludes the items on our agenda, and we are adjourned.